Oh, hey there. Welcome to Weekly Lit, episode 17, the Lost episode. How do I know it's lost from within the episode itself? Well, that's just one of the many mysteries that we'll encounter today in the Lost episode. And we are going to discuss a wonderful book written in 1933, Lost Horizon, by James Hilton. James Hilton wrote about 20 novels. Lost Horizon was a very popular mid-20th century novel, and because it's great, and also because it was one of the first, it was actually the first pocket book. Paperback books had been around since the 19th century, but Lost Horizon, I think within a few years after being published, became one of the first mass market paperback books, known as pocket books. So it was pocket book number one for obvious reasons. You could tuck it in your pocket, have a nice little paperback version. So it sold millions of copies, and his second novel became popular first. James Hilton also wrote Goodbye Mr. Chips, which we will cover in an upcoming double episode dealing with that and another similar novel that we're going to treat together. But anyway, for right now, we're going to do Lost Horizon. And Lost Horizon was also the subject, this book was the subject of a film made in 1937. I also think it inspired, to some extent, Somerset Maugham's The Razor's Edge, which was written in 1944, one of my favorite novels of all time, which is a little bit of an inversion of this story in a way. But Lost Horizon introduced a word that is commonplace in our vernacular now, Shangri-La, and a made-up utopia that he created. And it's really an excellent novel. It's well written, concise. You can knock it out in about 3 evening sessions, maybe even 2 if you put your mind to it. And it tells the story of Hugh Conway, a British war hero who it's framed by references to him disappearing and then reappearing with amnesia at the beginning and end of the story. But the meat of the story is his adventure along with his flight mates, Bernard, an American fellow, Miss Brinklow, was sort of a semi-missionary woman, and his colleague Mallinson, who was also in the British service. And their plane is hijacked and then flown into the Himalayas, where they encounter a lamasery, a hidden temple area known as Shangri-La, and where time seems to have stood still in many ways. And so they, on their adventures, immediately, some of them want to try to get out as quickly as possible, some of them want to stay, and there are revelations that take place. And it's really a great story. It ties in with Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken, which, through the miracle of time travel, I know that we will cover in the upcoming episode 20, following this Lost episode 17. And so the reference there is to a decision that Conway has to make. They all have to make the same decision, but Conway, as the protagonist, is the one that matters most to the reader, probably. And so the story covers their finding the monastery and encountering the High Lama there, who is an ancient figure, along with Chang, sort of his right-hand man, and Lang Se, a very seemingly young woman, for whom both Mallinson and, in a slightly more mature but relaxed fashion, Conway also, they both fall in love with her. Mallinson more aggressively so. And anyway, I really recommend catching up with this classic. It's a great story. And I'm going to read a little excerpt here, if I can juggle my cigar, fishing pole, and book all at the same time. So this excerpt is from chapter 3, where the hijacked planes, the hijacked plane survivors, which are the 4 that I've described already, meet with Chang, who is the emissary from the Lamasery up in the mountains. Fight the wind a little bit. Part of Conway was always an onlooker, however active might be the rest. Just now, while waiting for the strangers to come nearer, he refused to be fussed into deciding what he might or mightn't do in any number of possible contingencies. And this was not bravery or coolness, or any especially sublime confidence in his own power to make decisions on the spur of the moment. It was, if the worst view to be taken, a form of indolence, an unwillingness to interrupt his mere spectator's interest in what was happening. As the figures moved down the valley, they revealed themselves to be a party of a dozen or more, carrying with them a hooded chair. In this, a little later, could be discerned a person robed in blue. Conway could not imagine where they were all going, but it certainly seemed providential, as Miss Brinklow had said, that such a detachment would chance to be passing just there and then. As soon as he was within hailing distance, he left his own party and walked ahead, though not hurriedly, for he knew that Orientals enjoy the ritual of meeting and like to take their own time over it. Halting when a few yards off, he bowed with due courtesy. Much to his surprise, the robed figure stepped from the chair, came forward with dignified deliberation, and held out his hand. Conway responded and observed an old or elderly Chinese, gray-haired, clean-shaven, and rather pallidly decorative in a silk embroidered gown. He in his turn appeared to be submitting Conway to the same kind of reckoning. Then in precise and perhaps too accurate English, he said, "I am from the Lamasery of Shangri-La." Conway bowed again, and after a suitable pause began to explain briefly the circumstances that had brought him and his 3 companions to such an unfrequented part of the world. At the end of this recital, the Chinese made a gesture of understanding. "It is indeed remarkable," he said, and gazed reflectively at the damaged aeroplane. Then he added, "My name is Chang. If you would be so good as to present to me your friends." And so that's just an example of the meeting with Chang, and it goes from there up into the mountains, and the adventure begins. So I highly recommend Lost Horizons. It's again, a little bit of evocative of maybe the era of Raiders of the Lost Ark without being quite as swashbuckling in nature. But the decisions that go through, that Conway and Mallinson in particular go through, and their discussions with the characters they meet, most particularly the High Lama, and who he turns out to be, when that mystery is revealed, make for a really compelling story. So I really recommend it highly. It's a well-known book, it's a classic, and yet I don't think we hear much about it these days. And that's what I'm trying to do with Weekly Lit, is maybe highlight some things that maybe people have missed or might want to revisit. So I give it my 5-star recommendation. So until next episode, read harder.